Are you just going to commit adultery right in front of me?
I wasn't looking. Wait, what? Adultery?
Yeah, Jesus said it's adultery.
Oh, come on, Jesus.
Let there be light. Let there be light.
Hey guys, welcome back to Fourth Day. Today we're going to take a look at a topic that I've discussed with a lot of different people, both Christians, both Jews, and there's a bit of contention about what Jesus said when he's speaking in the Sermon on the Mount on one of these specific issues. All right, so I'm going to put this on the screen here so you can have a context of what we're talking about and you know from the title what it is, but just so everybody has a reference to what this is about moving forward in this video, here's the text. Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto you, that whosoever looketh upon a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. All right, so there's two levels of contention here, all right? Number one, I hear people say, well, Jesus added to the Torah, because every time he speaks, he says, but I say unto you. So there's this long list of things that Jesus is saying here, stemming from Matthew chapter 5 to Matthew chapter 7. It's known as the Sermon on the Mount. You see the Beatitudes and all these things, and he keeps going on, and he gives more, seemingly more commandments than what was already said before. And so many interpret that to say, well, Jesus is saying, but I say unto you, trying to say, well, I'm giving you something new. All right, so we're going to take a look at that. But the second contention is this true? Is it true that it is just as bad to look upon a woman with intent to lust as it is to commit adultery? We're going to find out. All right, so first thing I want you to know is you have to look at the context of what's going on here. And just so people know here, I'm not a Christian. You know, I prefer to call myself Israel. All right, so I don't have a dog in this game. I'm not here to defend Jesus. I'm not here to do anything other than get objective viewpoints. All right, so whether you're Christian, whether you're Jewish, I'm not on either one of your sides technically. Okay, I'm just here to try to break down things that are in the New Testament, break down things that are being hotly contested, and then find out where do we stand. Okay, so just so everybody's clear on that. When you read in Matthew chapter 5, in the beginning of his discourse, I want you to take a look at what he says. All right. Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I'm not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled. Now, this is a scripture that a lot of times Christians will reference, and they'll use this for some odd reason as a way for them to say, well, the law's done away with. Jesus got rid of the law. It was nailed to the cross. Well, this completely contradicts what he just said. He just said, don't think I've come to destroy the law. I'm come to fulfill it. Okay? So what does he mean by this? Well, if you look in the Greek, you're going to see this here on the screen. This is the Greek word that is being used here to describe the English translation, fulfill. But we got to figure out, what does it really mean, fulfill? Does he mean, a lot of times Christians will look at this and act like the law of God is something meant to be fulfilled, like it's some type of prophecy. That's not what he's talking about. All right. This word means to complete or fulfill, but this can mean other meanings other than what it means in English. It doesn't mean just like fulfilled in the terms of, oh, I'm fulfilling the law, I'm fulfilling, What he's saying here is he's trying to bring it to completion or proper understanding or expression. So what that means is if people think, oh, well, I'm not doing anything wrong because A, B, and C, he's trying to say, here's some clarification on this. Now, with that said, just because he says, but I say unto you, doesn't mean that he's somehow saying, oh, I'm rising this above what God says or anything like that. We're going to take a look at examples here, and we're going to find out, is this teaching found in the Tanakh anywhere? Because if it is, then he's not adding anything. He's just expounding upon what was already written. And does this mean that he's saying that it's equal, one person, one man, so let's say a man goes and commits adultery, and another man, he just desires to commit adultery with someone because he sees how beautiful she is. Is Jesus saying this is the same thing? We're going to take a look at that too. So let's take a look at what Solomon said, okay? And you're going to see, it looks almost like he's directly quoting from this, but look at Proverbs chapter 6. To keep thee from the evil woman and the flattery of the tongue of a strange woman. Lust not after her beauty in thine heart. What's he talking about? He's talking about the adulteress, someone that's used to cheating on her husband. Right? How many of us have seen in our lifetimes, especially those of you that are young, you hear what's called cougars. There's a lot of those, right? And so what they do is they typically prey on the younger men. And so if you're a young man at this time, you see a beautiful woman, once you take hold on her, and you lust after her, you're just going to melt to butter. It's hard to say no at that point. That's what Solomon's talking about here. So he says, lust not after her beauty in thine heart, neither let her take thee with her eyelids. For by a means of a whorish woman a man is brought to a piece of bread, and the adulteress will hunt for the precious life. And there he gives the analogy here that you can equate with to doing this. Like, if I'm going to lust after this woman in my heart, something's going to happen. This is dangerous. So this is what Solomon is going on to and giving wisdom about. So in verse 27 it says, can a man take fire in his bosom and his clothes not be burned? Can one go upon hot coals and his feet not be burned? The same it is for he that goeth to the neighbor's wife. Whosoever touches her shall not be innocent. So this is what Solomon is saying. He's saying, look, when you see a beautiful woman and you desire to take her, it all begins with that look first. From there, if you're going to entertain those thoughts, then it will probably end up in adultery. It's very hard for a man. I mean, look at today's society. Look, as a man, as a human being, we have sexuality all over the place. I mean, I have things in place on my computer to try to block, certain sites, things like that. But even if I go on Facebook, do you understand, like, reels are all over the place with just women just throwing themselves out there trying to get clicks and ads in this day and age where there's, almost every woman has an OnlyFans, it feels like now. It's all over the place. Everything is hypersexualized. So it's even harder nowadays. So that doesn't mean that every single person that is looking at a woman or sees it or whatever, I mean, it doesn't mean you're committing adultery. What it's saying is everything's going to begin in the heart. And if you start to entertain the first look, it's like, oh, she's beautiful. The longer you stare, the longer you stare, the longer you stare, the harder it's going to be to not give into that temptation if that woman throws herself at you. You understand that? Can a man take fire in his bosom and he not be burned? Can his clothes not be burned? No. It's going to be very difficult for you to say no to that. And even the strongest men are going to fall to that, especially in this day and age. So let's take a look at another example. All right, you remember Job. Now, Job said something very prominent about this very topic. All right, so take a look at Job chapter 31, verse 1, and he says, I made a covenant with my eyes. Why then should I look upon a maid? So Job here is saying here that, look, I've made a covenant with my eyes. I'm not going to try to look upon a woman to try to lust after her. Well, why is he doing that? Well, there's nothing wrong with looking at a woman, right? There isn't. But at the same time, if you're going to continuously seek after looking at women lustfully, eventually what's going to happen is that's going to get so overwhelming and you're going to need an outlet. You're going to have to let it out. So if you make a covenant with your eyes, put up safeguards on your computer to make sure you're not watching pornography. Put up safeguards. Do as much as you can, because the more you give into that, that will grow. Okay? So Job made a personal covenant with his own eyes. I don't see anything wrong with that, nor do I see anything wrong with what Solomon said. Now, the bigger question is what Jesus is saying, does this have to do with any of the 10 commandments? And yes, it does. So the 10th commandment, people commonly, for whatever reason, forget, but it has to do with covetousness. But notice what God says and instructs us about covetousness. All right, take a look. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, neither shalt thou covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Now, why does God give the commandment not to covet? Well, lust begins with sight. You see something, you want it. What can come of that afterwards? You're going to take action. You're going to steal. You're going to commit adultery. You're going to do these things. Everything begins with the heart. So when I start looking at something, I'm going to start desiring it. Now, this is why we should always be content with what we have, right? Because that's going to solve a lot of issues. Because the person that's always wanting, he'll never be satisfied. How many men do you see out there, out in the world, that have beautiful wives, but yet they cheat on their wives, use prostitutes, whatever the case may be? It never ends. So covetousness is what God's describing here, and he gives an explicit example, not to covet your neighbor's wife. Now, I say that everything begins in the heart, right? And Jesus says if you covet your neighbor's wife, or you lust after your neighbor's wife in your heart, then you've already committed adultery with it in your heart. That doesn't mean that you've actually completed the act. What he's stating is that everything begins with the heart. And this is no different than what Solomon said. Solomon said, keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Now, why does Solomon say that? Because from the heart everything begins. So where do we see this coming to fruition within the biblical text? So we know David had adultery with Bathsheba, and we can see this all playing out. David sees Bathsheba bathing, sees that she's beautiful, and then the thoughts and the lust permeates, and then it becomes a full act of adultery. So that's what Jesus is describing. He says, don't look upon a woman to lust after her, because you're going to end up doing adultery. That's what David did. Take a look. It came to pass at eventide that David arose from off his bed and walked upon the roof of his king's house, and from the roof he saw a woman washing herself, and the woman was very beautiful to look upon. And David sent and inquired after the woman, and one said, is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? And David sent messengers and took her, and she came in unto him, and he lay with her, and she was purified from her uncleanness, and she returned into her house. So this is all just showing exactly what this principle is stating. Everything begins in the heart. If I'm going to look at a woman with intent to lust after her, this is going to grow from the heart into a full-blown action. Doesn't mean it's the same thing as committing the actual act, because once I take a look at that woman and I look to lust after her, I can stop myself. The problem is, you do that enough times over a period of time and you don't bridle that, then you're going to end up having to have a release. You're going to end up doing what you don't want to do, because it's going to get so strong you can't say no. And that's what happens. And like I said, especially in this day and age, in the age of the internet and pornography and things like that, everything is so accessible, and not just accessible, hyper accessible, right? But that's going to end up permeating. It's going to take hold on you, and it's going to be all you think about. It'll consume you. So in conclusion, I don't find any problems with what Jesus is saying. I don't think he's adding anything to the Torah. Again, I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm not Christian, so I'm not trying to defend Jesus. Look, I'm looking for truth. All right. At the end of the day, if I see instruction from righteousness, whether it's in Buddhism, whether it's, from whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm taking a look at this text. I'm looking at the claims that I've heard in the past, and I'm analyzing them. And this is my conclusion. I find that what Jesus is saying is totally in alignment with what Solomon said in Proverbs chapter 6. And I see it with Job 31:1. And then I see this all playing out with what David did with Bathsheba. So I find no problems with this. I think the problem is that many people have, especially if you're Jewish and you don't believe Jesus is the Messiah, nor do I, then you look at him and anything he says you want to discount. Now, why is that? Because many on the Jewish side are those that have left the church. They have the stench of idolatry still there. And so they end up being so angry that they were either tricked, or they're upset that they know he's not the Messiah. And so they just discount everything he says, and not just discount, they try to discount it. Instead of looking at what he's saying objectively and finding out, is there truth in this, is there not? And that's what I want to try to sway people away from doing. So Jesus, when he's saying, I'm not coming to destroy the law, I'm coming to fulfill it. What he's saying is, I'm trying to give its full understanding and its full completion of what's intended. He's not saying he's adding anything to it. He's not saying he's taking anything away. What he's trying to say is just what I mentioned. He's trying to bring it to its full completion, full understanding. So I hope that's a help. If you have any questions, if you disagree, if you don't, doesn't bother me on this video. This isn't something that is like a core, philosophy or doctrine of mine that I hold very dear to me. But based on the references that we've just read, I have no problems with this claim. All right. So have a good rest of the day. I'll talk to you guys on another video.
Let there be